Hey everybody, welcome to the computer, and we're going to be talking about some color correcting techniques. We're going to take a look at a couple files and talk about both a general like production print color correction as well as a targeted color correction to certain areas of an image. Maybe it hasn't gone to press yet, and you can afford to play with the image a little bit more in terms of getting the color the way the customer wants it to be. Alright, so production print environment. So first prints come off the press and they don't match what the prior print was. Let's say these images here on the left represent how the image printed the first time it ran, and today it's coming out like this. We measured color, your delta E is off from what it should be, and the print noticeably looks off, enough to warrant a color correction. So first and foremost, before you look at it with just the naked eye, and the eye is great for detecting differences in color, but it doesn't always let you know what needs to be done to an image. First and foremost, this is going to be cheesy here, but in the press room somewhere, or maybe in the pre-press office or graphics office, there's a spectrophotometer. The first thing you want to do is measure, the image's color. So you're going to take your spectrophotometer, you're going to read the original image, and then you're going to read the new image. Hopefully the press team or quality control or whatever has saved the initial print run. Otherwise you're completely in the dark. So you're going to take out that initial press run, measure it, and then take a look at your lab values. Now these lab values here, I obviously typed in. This is not a real spectrophotometer. I made it and named it myself and created this little image. But so your LAB values are here is showing the difference between the two images. So this is your sample image, and this is your target. Actually, I'm sorry, this is the target. This is the sample. So we have some lab values here. We're at a positive A star value of 3.6 and a negative B value, B star value of about 2. And our luminance is a little on the darker side. Total delta E is about a 5, which is not passing, and we need to make a color correction. So we can tell that from the positive A value we're a little bit too far into the red, and we are a little bit too yellow. And we're also dark, which is good, because the values make sense. We're too dark and we need to take color out. So correcting your A and B value in turn will correct your luminance value as well. Taking color out, so we're getting a little bit lighter, and yeah, so that works out. So what do? We can't just go into, say, like brightness and contrast, or any of those image adjustments, hue and saturation, color balance. We want to avoid these if we're on a CMYK press, especially if it's a conventional litho or flexo press, anything that uses plates, because this is going to change all the color. We'll have to make 4 new plates. We'll have to wait for those 4 new plates to be mounted. Press will have to remake ready, and that's going to take a long time. It's going to waste money, and we're making plates that we probably don't need to remake. So we have our lab values. Now red doesn't necessarily mean magenta. Uh, lab values are independent of device. They're not device dependent numbers. So this could apply to a wide range of different fields. We're in printing, we're using cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. So we have to kind of translate these values into CMYK. Now, your A star value means red as in a bright fire engine red, not magenta, which is relatively pink. So we can kind of factor in that we're going to need to move both magenta and yellow in some fashion. And since we're a little bit too yellow in our B value here, actually a negative B is towards blue, so we're a little bit too blue. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply a set of curves to the images. So we're going to, first and foremost, of course you can't see on my screen here because I cropped it off. We're going to apply a curves layer mask. And then here we have our CMYK value. So if this is saying RGB, that means you've opened the file in RGB and you're going to be correcting RGB. We're in a production print environment, say, so that's not going to be of any use to us. We need it to be in CMYK. And then from this drop down menu, we're going to select the precise separation that we want to adjust. And in this case, magenta, we're going to hit the magenta. Usually you want to do a mid-tone adjustment, bringing down red and bringing down probably yellow a little bit. And you can see here now that we've got both images are now much closer to what the initial print run looked like. Now we only have to make two plates. We're just going to remake the magenta plate and the yellow plate, and the black and cyan plate that are on the machine can stay there. Now they don't have to mount the two plates. You still got to make ready. There's no way around that. But you save money on the plates, save time in the mounting process, and you can be back and running. And hopefully we get something more of like a delta E of like 1.5, maybe 2, instead of the 5 that we're at before. Alright, so let's take a look at some more targeted color corrections. When I first got out of school, one of the first jobs I had was actually working for a wedding photographer. And we had to do a lot of different color corrections. And most of them were pretty targeted to one area of the image and not the rest. And we could still use the same layer mask technique. We're just going to use a different means of applying it. So let's take a look at the first image, which looks quite cold all around. The dresses are both going to have probably all colors in the dress. Even though it looks quite neutral at a glance, if your print device is slightly off one way or another in any color, me personally, I feel like this dress already looks a little bit green to me, or maybe a little bit too blue. This one definitely too warm. And like I said, if your press is printing slightly one way or the other, you're definitely going to pick that up in any neutral color tone, whether it's something that's supposed to print white or neutral gray, will appear overly warm or cold in the print. So we're still going to apply a curve adjustment, and maybe we'll turn off the one image just so we can focus on this one. An interesting way of seeing where color lives in an image is to just crank up one separation or another, and you'll see that there's plenty of blue printing throughout the image. dress included. So what we're going to do is we could use a polygonal lasso to isolate the dress. Take a little bit of time to trace that out. And we're going to be using more traditional methods here. We're not going to use any of the AI or autocorrect, or we're not going into Lightroom or Camera Raw or anything like that. So generally speaking, you can do now this is going to be more for first time the job is being ran, or maybe you're a photographer or a home printer that printed a couple copies of some photos and are not particularly happy with how they look. We can actually desaturate. Maybe we want to hold on to black, but we'll take cyan. In this case, we could just focus on the highlights of the image. That's where color lives, anywhere between, say, 0 and 30%. And we can kind of cut it. And if you're looking at the rest of the image and saying, hey, you're ruining the whole thing, you're right, I am. But we're going to go back in and just apply it to one area of the photo. Maybe we want to go a little bit more in yellow. Then I think we're kind of unlocking a bit more color in there than we should. And then on your layer mask here, we can use our brush to kind of reset that back to how it was. Make sure our brushes are set to black and white. And then if we hit the B key, we can go to brush, use our brackets to make it bigger or smaller. And then we can set our opacity maybe to somewhere around 50. And we can actually paint on this particular color adjustment. And we're going to try to avoid hitting the skin tones, the background, anything like that. This transparent area could be a little bit of a slippery slope. And as we're doing it, we don't see a profound difference, but when we toggle this on and off, you'll definitely see how we've made the dress a little bit more neutral and a little bit safer to print. I'm still seeing a little bit of red in here. You could apply a second curve layer adjustment just to magenta. You can hit the X key to toggle your masks. We're going to put it on black, and then we're going to use the paint bucket tool to just fully remove it. Toggle it back to the white, back to the brush, and then we can put it on just in the area that we needed it to be. You can see how red it was and where we're at now. And we can also do the inverse to the background if we wanted to, which it kind of has a nice feel for it. The way it's kind of not so saturated and a little bit cooler, which maybe for some other form of artistic photography that might be okay, but for a wedding it looks a bit gloomy. It was probably an overcast day, not a lot of sunshine, and the camera lens is picking up a lot of those blue tones. We can apply yet one curve further, maybe to yellow, crank that up in the background to kind of warm it up a little bit. Maybe even do a little bit of magenta, but no, I don't think it needs it. I think it's mostly overly blue. go back, take the mask off. Make sure you have your mask selected. And we're literally going to do the rest of the image on the outside. Kind of warm it up a little bit. And maybe you want to do one more. Maybe you want to make the flowers pop a little bit. We can maybe do the entire saturation here, less black. Maybe you want to do just the flowers. Although there's not much color in there. That's off and on with those. Give them a little bit of more of a, pink color to it. And then let me see if it'll let us group all these masks together into a single layer. Yeah, you just hit a Control G on that, Command G if you're on a Mac, and you'll see everything that we've done to the photo so far. Now we don't want to get too bright with the dress because we want whatever detail is in there to remain as it is. We don't want it to appear blown out. But it looked quite dim to begin with. So here we have a much safer element without having as much color in the neutral tones. Whether the print device shifts one way or the other doesn't hold as much of a profound weight on how the color looks. I'm just going to reset for a moment, and we'll go back and we'll take a look at the other two images. Maybe turn this one off. We'll get rid of this group. And then we'll take a look at these two. Correcting teeth and eye color was another big one. Correcting skin tone. A lot of times people appear or they print a little bit too on the red side. Teeth appear yellow, and that could be just the dental hygiene of the individual, or it just could be the lighting. Excessively warm lighting creates more yellow and red tones in the photo. And we're going to take a look at that in 1 second.